Everyone, again, welcome to FYI for your institution. And today we're going to talk about giving days or days of giving, however you want to call them at your institution. Regardless of the nomenclature, we want you to be as successful as possible with them. So today we have a very special guest, Lauren Jaeger, our Director of Client Development. Lauren, can you tell us about your experience in advancement and why we have you here today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Mike, and thanks for joining us, everybody. My name is Lauren Jaeger. I am sales director in the Southeast region and a few outlying states. So you may hear from me or my teammate Jake at sometimes. But really today I'm here wearing my advancement hat. Been at Mongoose about 5 years. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, originally from Western New York, where Mike is right now. And before joining the Mongoose team, I worked in higher education advancement for about 10 years. Started as a student phone-a-thon caller, like many of you probably here on the call today, student alumni ambassador. Worked at my own alma mater in alumni relations and annual giving, spent some time on the nonprofit side, and my most recent advancement role was a major gift officer at Kent State University and here at a local food bank. So yes, I am a Mongoose sales lady, but really today I'm just kind of dipping my toe back into strategy here with Mike, who knows a lot about this topic, and just really happy to help our clients on the advancement side as it ties me back to my roots.
Good. We're happy to have you. So apart from giving us another touch point before fiscal year end, Lauren, why do we actually do giving days? Like, what's the whole point of doing these?
Because everyone else is doing them. No, I'm kidding. That's not why we do them, right? So, well, we've really lost some traditional channels that we used to use, direct mail, phone programs in the most traditional space. And so like anything else, we have to adapt and find our donors where they are. And Giving Day is merely a tactic of our larger strategy. It certainly can highlight ways to highlight board members or corporate and strategic partners by way of matching gifts, as well as create urgency for renewed gifts from your lapsed donors, and even inspire a first-time gift. So just a quick note about corporate partners. I think sometimes they're overlooked here, or at least not given a lot of airtime. And so these are a really great way to provide a deeper engagement opportunity for corporate partners or board members that you may have been looking to engage in a meaningful way. They, from their perspective, can get some airtime in creating some matching opportunities for those who participate in your giving days. So take a look at your short list of corporate community members, board members, and the like that you feel like could be capable of doing more, who might respond to being involved in this sort of way. It's really nice that on every material that's going out, you could highlight that board member or donor as providing additional support. It doesn't even have to be that fancy. It could also be like a coach that's matching gifts, or a faculty member, or someone else. So I did want to just make a note about, not only are we trying to get as many new donors and lapsed donors and dollars, but there's also very strategic ways that we could be involving folks that we've been looking for an outlet to involve. A successful giving day is very much an exercise in how well do you trust your data, and how good are you at telling your story and making your donors the hero in that story to inspire action, of course. So every interaction a constituent has with your organization is giving you clues about who they are and what they care about. And so it is very easy to blast generic messaging on all channels about your giving day, but I have news for you. We are not going to recommend that here today. In that vein, in the hyper focus and personalization of this event, there has been an evolution towards designated fund campaigning rather than just opening up your giving day for only unrestricted dollars.
Yeah, and actually I'd be curious, because I find that more days of giving or giving days tend to have a giving page with more designations, and really the marketing and all the outreach is really targeted around those designations. So I'd be curious in the chat, or you could be the first person in the history of this series ever.
Do it.
To go on camera and tell us verbally. Really, what's the focus of your institution? And are you looking at things more from obtaining unrestricted dollars for your annual fund, or are you really focusing more on designating funds and getting participation more in individual endeavors, essentially?
Great. So we're just pausing a minute just to get some feedback. So definitely do that, or feel free to raise your hand or unmute.
Yeah. And feel free to put it in the chat too. I know some people might not love being on camera and talking. That's totally fine. So I see Kim wrote in, we did designated giving last year. We had 4 focused ones plus unrestricted. Kim, how did that go? I'd be curious to read your feedback on that. Ashley wrote many unique designations. Ashley, what would be some of those designations? I typically see a couple arts programs. So typically something in fine arts. I see typically campus radio. I see Pride Center, LGBTQ centers often recognized, marching band recognized, teams recognized. Oh, student emergency fund, that's a good one. Any type of student emergency fund, food pantries, those are all really good.
Yeah, I think what's great about those two is that it's a very emotional ask. So in a day of giving where you have a short window to convince someone to give, those compelling stories, and we're going to talk about storytelling a little bit throughout here, but it really is important with these call to actions that there's a compelling reason to give. Like, why today? Why not last week or 3 weeks from now? What's so important about this stretch of time that we're talking about? So Absolutely. It seems like there's a lot of I'm seeing a lot of designated, still some unrestricted annual fund, which is still worthy, as we know.
Right. So Michelle mentioned she has over 200 causes, but it really helps spread the message of giving. So is the participation well spread out, Michelle, at your institution, or do you find that a couple areas really take the lion's share of the participation on those days?
So I'll be the first, I guess, to speak.
Michelle, I feel like we should have confetti. Oh my gosh.
We're sending you swag. It's happening.
That goes off here in Orchard Park.
So I think I heard your question correctly. Could you ask it one more time and I'd be happy to answer.
So do you find that there was a pretty reasonable distribution of activity across those 200 funds, or did you find that it was more concentrated to a handful or a few?
So obviously the ones that market and take advantage of the day receive more gifts than others. We have athletics really pushes it, and so they see a lot. The schools and colleges have deans who push, and so they see a lot. But all the RSOs, the clubs and organizations that participate, they may not see as many gifts, but for a small student organization, $1,000 makes a huge impact. So that's why we don't limit the designations, is because once we push that money out, there are students all over campus who see Giving Day funds in their account throughout the year, and they're able to purchase things with that money. And then when Giving Day comes around, the culture of philanthropy is, oh, we've used these funds, we should give back. This is our day to fundraise. So we've never limited it. We do encourage for specific matching gifts. If we are able to secure those, we'll market those to specific areas. But anybody can give anywhere. It's really a just day of giving for us.
I love that. I love that it's truly been embraced. And I know when I was in my last position of running like a Giving Day, this was a while ago, but they were very hesitant to open it up because those unrestricted dollars were so important. So did you find that you had the internal support, or did you feel like you had to kind of lobby for it to be as open as it wound up being able to be?
I think it's just the culture that we have here is the advancement staff has been very supportive of giving back anywhere. And that's been for probably the last decade. They've opened that up. We don't call it the annual fund anymore because no one's motivated by that to give. Our younger alumni are really the largest group of alumni we have, and they're motivated by the clubs and organizations that impacted them while they were here. And that's also a much easier story for us to tell. So during Phonathon throughout the year, we encourage the Greatest Need Fund, the unrestricted funds. And we do see enough in there that no one's ever questioned, why aren't you pushing the Greatest Need Fund? We do that with our mailers. We do that during Phonathon. Giving Day is really for the students, for the people who are going to be asking for the gifts.
That's a great outlook. I feel like success begets success, and just creating that culture of giving is the most important thing that you'll do, and it'll pay dividends for decades and generations, hopefully.
Yeah, Michelle, that's great. If I may ask too, I've talked to some VPs of student affairs who say, you know what, I really don't want student organizations involved in fundraising. Did you face, okay, so I see from your facial reactions that that's uncommon, that you would find that you would embrace that actually more in student.
Yeah, it depends. We have received a little bit of from the top down, like encourage students to be involved, but maybe staff really shouldn't be pushing it as much. And so that was interesting to experience. But overall, we've never had any resistance. We've been able to go to SGA forums. We've been able to meet with student orgs. The idea is they fundraise anyway. They fundraise throughout the year. We are having this day and encouraging them to fundraise on this day to really build that momentum. So if they're going to do it anyway, if they're going to buy shirts out of their pocket, if they're going to buy food, why not give back to their organization and then have that money throughout the year to use on those things?
I love that. That's awesome. I see a lot of agreement, body language. It's good. Susan, you mentioned that you offered 85 funds during your last day of giving, and your donors ended up giving to 90. Where did they find the other 5 funds? Where did that come from?
They wrote them in.
Ah.
So in addition to the 85, they just found even 5 more, or they found 5 more that they wanted to give to.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. So this is a really nice segue. So regardless of the approach, if you're really focusing on unrestricted giving or focusing on particular funds, building ambassador relationships on campus and off is so important. It really helps you spread the word. So sitting through hundreds of Giving Tuesday and Day of Giving campaigns, anecdotally, it seems like building those relationships before you do a day of giving is so important. In fact, we know that peer-to-peer ask results in about a 44% higher conversion rate. So if possible, have those challenge gifts for programs that are going to be on campus and definitely solicit support for those people. Now, it's also important if you are planning a day of giving and you're texting that you obtain some type of consent. So the carriers have put in new standards that go beyond the TCPA. Things are kind of in flux right now. The main thing you need to know if you are going to text that, as far as carrier changes are concerned, if you haven't communicated with a group of contacts yet, it's best to gain consent before your first message. The best practices ensure in the long run that you have more engaged kind of audiences. So I know for the folks who are interested in texting, we want to make sure that we're giving you that legalese and covering that so you're aware. Now, I'm not big on generational thinking and thinking that generations are very different in their perspectives, but we know in giving that's a little bit different because obviously Gen Z and millennials might not be in the same position to provide a capital gift as well as maybe a baby boomer might be able to. So I do want to touch a little bit on the generational aspect. So we know that 32% of Gen Z donates to causes, in fact, multiple causes. The average millennial gives over $100 to over 3 causes, which is pretty impressive. So that's over $100 combined across 3 areas. And 10% of Gen Z wants to start their own nonprofit organizations. And those 2 generations, but really I think everyone expects some type of personalization. So if you're engaging on mobile with texting, if you're doing email, if you're doing video, as much as you possibly can, because I know it's not always scalable to personalize, you should try to personalize your messaging there. And also when we talk about digital, we also want to talk about digital wallets. So also I'd be curious in the comments, how many institutions allow donations via Venmo or PayPal or Zelle or some other application like that? Because we know that Venmo is the largest source of transactions under $300. I'd be curious to hear what people say on that. So I'm going to let people chime in here as well. We're working on digital wallet, I see. What giving apps are being used to encourage giving? I've seen a few, so I don't know how mobile they are, but I know GiveGab has I forget which tool. Is it? Don't think it's PayPal. I don't think it's Venmo. I think they might use digital wallet. I think, is it Classy? I believe has Venmo. And I want to say Give
Campus is another one, right?
Oh, nice. So Lauren, talk about Give Campus. What do they?
Well, I don't know too much about it, but I know that they have partnered with both Facebook and Venmo, and with PayPal and Venmo is owned by PayPal, but Venmo is definitely more the younger generation, where PayPal is more of like me and Mike and others. Although, I mean, I use Venmo a lot, but just traditionally what the research is saying is that the younger the population, the more they're apt to do Venmo. Other thing, little bit off topic, but circling back to what Mike said about engaging and like not, he doesn't put a little clout into the generational thinking. One thing we like to point out, we, through our partnerships, we've done some research on the generation most likely to respond to a text message. And Mike, I know you have some stats there, which I always love to highlight.
Well, thanks for teeing that up.
Yeah,
we won't talk about this, but yeah, so most people, when they think about texting and giving days, they think, well, yeah, millennials, Gen Z, that's who we're going to text. The cohort of 1970 to 1979 actually across the board has the highest engagement rate, response rate with texting. So don't be afraid to text, more established.
And then getting back to what we're talking about here is that those same people, although they're engaging via text message, they probably want either a link to donate, or they want you to mail something, or you're going to send them an email to remind them. But very interesting that you brought up the kind of define generational thinking. And I always like that stat because it really, I think it breaks some assumptions that people have about certain media in certain age groups.
Good. And Lauren, you had experience setting up digital payments, right? Was it Venmo that you used at one of your PayPal?
No, one of the things I was just saying is a note about the mobile first approach is make sure if you're not currently using digital wallets and you're using these apps that we're recommending to process payments, make sure you're working with your business office to get the payments directly processed to your institution. We don't need any volunteers or staff members having, the tax officials coming after them because they thought that they could, transfer funds over to the institution through something. So I think it goes without saying, but I know sometimes myself as a young annual giving professional who set up like an Eventbrite in my name, there's unintended consequences of these things. So word to the wise, I think most everybody knows that on the call. But
in chat too as well. Lauren, I believe you're with UT Knoxville. Lauren mentioned that over 30% of Giving Day gifts actually came through digital wallet. Their last Giving Day. I think is that Big Orange Give, Lauren, in the fall that you did?
Yeah, it sure is. This was the first year that we had that we've had PayPal for a couple of years and Venmo, but this was the first year we were able to expand it to Apple Pay, Google Pay, and we actually even used Microsoft Pay, but we've been getting gifts through Microsoft Pay.
Good to know.
I didn't know Microsoft had Pay, so I don't know what that
Me either.
Well, thanks for that note. So we've talked about engagement a little bit with social. We talked about digital wallets. Lauren, what kind of data should we actually pull on people and how would we use that going into a Giving Day?
Yeah, well, before we move on to that, there was one thing I always wanted to say, and it's more of an exercise. Like right now, everybody on this call, take out your cell phone, navigate to your giving form, and ask yourself, how long did it take for me to find this? Actually, go ahead and fill it out. I won't make you make a gift, but it wouldn't be the worst thing if you did. But go through your form, fill it out, and then ask yourself, like, did we accept a digital wallet? Did my information pre-populate? Did it give me that option? And how easy is it for me to socially share my participation in giving? Maybe it doesn't share the amount, but these are some things that you could consider working up to your Giving Day of what the experience of especially Millennial and Gen Z will be being mobile first, what their experience will look like when they go to your website, if that's how they get to your giving form. But as far as data goes, I think it's really important to segment. So we definitely talked about that already. As far as who, it's gonna vary based on your institution. I know the first institution I worked for had a name change. It went from secular to non-secular, like midway through its history. So there was a lot of like sub segments within both of those populations, but some good places to start. Obviously your live bunts and your side bunts. And I'll take that further to those donors who respond well to matching opportunities. Definitely have some sort of matching challenge or opportunity throughout your Giving Day. Maybe it's in the home stretch, or a lull in giving. It could be a way to inspire some additional gifts. Some folks will even do giving days where the fund that gets the most donations within a certain hour gets like a bonus donation from a board member or something. Definitely do that. I think there's times where lulls in giving can be augmented by that stuff. So back to the data. So live bunts, side bunts, take it further to those who do respond to certain types of giving, like the matches I mentioned, restricted givers versus unrestricted givers, reunion only givers, and get as granular as necessary to define what success is going to look like at your institution. Other categories to consider for different messaging on giving days would be parents, faculty, staff, and certainly retirees of the institution, athletes and fans, and also our never givers, or as we like to call them, future donors. Perhaps segment those by geography, grad year, giving maybe grad era in my example where I kind of had two different populations I was dealing with. And then of course, take care to cater to those Gen Z and millennials as we spoke about earlier.
Yeah, and if I may too, when we talk about segmentation, working with a number of institutions, seeing lots of giving days, gamification is so important. So it seems like most institutions come into a day of giving with usually anywhere 5 to 25, 30, maybe 40% of their goal reached going into that day. They have some early donors, that's great, VIP donors maybe, that came in and chipped in. And then, you've reached your live bunts, side bunts, your loyal donors, board members, you've reached out to pretty much everyone you know. And now it is 2:00. You've got 10 hours left to raise that last 30, 40, 20%, whatever you got left. And gamification is so key. So using geography and texting everyone in Wyoming and saying, can you be our first donor in the state of Wyoming? Or can you be our first donor in San Jose? Or the class of 2008 is outraising you by $15,000. Can you beat them by the end of the day? Or the baseball team has X number of dollars more than you do, football alumni. Can you beat them by the end of the day? So those little gamification hits are really impactful, especially if you can tie them, like Lauren said, to any type of matching gift or challenge as well.
Hey, Mike, I want a kind of a real life example of that was my cousin's daughter, second, whatever she is to me, my second cousin, maybe, I don't know. She's like the track star at my own alma mater, actually. And I gave to them on the giving day. Bright and early, I want to make sure that I'm participating, supporting. And later in the day, I got a Facebook Messenger message from my aunt, which is her grandma. And she's like, hey, Hannah's really trying to beat the rest of the athletics teams in the amount of new gifts. By the end of the day, whoever gets the most new gifts and new donors to their athletic fund, the coaches are all going to commit to donating $1,000 to whichever sport or whatever. So you bet I wound up having to give two gifts to my alma mater that day because I had to support Hannah. So those things really do take off. It just takes kind of a carrot. In that example, my aunt really wanted to support her granddaughter's team by helping recruit. And so you'll just be really surprised of all of these unknown ambassadors that will pop up when you create opportunities for some gamification.
Absolutely. And when we talk about gamification, when we talk about these populations, it is important to remember that just because somebody participates in something as a student doesn't necessarily mean that aligns with their giving their goals or their particular participation. So my wife was a Division I swimmer at our alma mater. And when she gets the solicitation letter from athletics, she gets very annoyed. She doesn't like that day when it comes in. So she much rather prefers to donate to the education department. She's a teacher here in Buffalo Public Schools. So that's where she gets. So just keep that in mind, that just because somebody participated in band or in, drama, theater, whatever, that they're still doing that or still interested in giving that. But it's a good place to start.
100%. And guess what? Your alma mater has the data they needed to know that based on her prior history. So you have the resources you need in your database. I know some are, you're more confident in data than others, but do rely on the clues that donors have given you to tell you what they really care about. And like I said, I know it's very easy to say, we're doing a giving day, and just the nature of the giving day should inspire the gift. It just doesn't work that way. It still has to be something that's going to tie back to my heartstrings. And the more that you can, I love to hear how designated gifts are being mostly fully supported across organizations, stressing in a very personalized way through segmentation that, Lauren Jaeger, did you know you could support, first generation psychology undergrad student? That's something maybe that I would, be interested in. So definitely do that.
Good. Looking at the comments, Brian brought up that would technically be your first cousin once removed.
Oh, thank you. I'm
For any
curious.
aspiring genealogist on today, just chalk that one out. So Brian, thank you
you.
for that insight. Appreciate it. So we've completed our day of giving. We've met our goal. Everybody's excited. Lauren, what's next? Like, what do we do from there?
You just start planning the next fundraiser, right? So we really need to loop back around and really, again, make the donors the hero of the story. Come to the table with pre-planned, assuming you meet your goals, reporting back the impact that your donors have had. I know that some organizations have adopted a Grateful Wednesday. What is it?
That's right. After Giving Tuesday, yes.
Yeah, Giving Tuesday. And I said, we all love a themed day, right? Especially in advancement. We're used to planning events, that sort of thing. But really, truly, I think it's really important that we don't just focus on the next ask, but to circle back on these folks. Also, consider a thank you appeal to any first-time donor. As we know, the leaky bucket is real in the giving funnel. It's going to be critical that you listen to what your first-time donors gave to, so that you can replicate their giving in going forward. And you should have a strategy built behind what's next after you get all these first-time donors, which you will hopefully get.
Yeah, a staff member here internally, we were talking about a meeting we were in, and my alma mater started texting with us, which is really exciting. And he made a joke that he got a text from our institution and about Giving Day. And he said, great, what is our school giving us on Giving Day? Just to be funny and mess with the person on the other side. And I was thinking about it, and in the moment it was like, yeah, it's kind of funny, but actually thinking about that, like what articles, what social media, what Zoom backgrounds, what potential philanthropic retail do you have that day that is also a gift back to people for participating on Days of Giving is, I think, something to think about. That's good. Well, good. Well, I think with that, we've covered the material we wanted to cover. So we've got plenty of time for questions and answers. We have a very active group today. So thank you for that. It makes doing these a lot more fun and engaging. So if you have questions, comments you want to discuss, let me know. I see our first one here from Lizzie. What is a simple, and by the way, put these in the chat. It's in the bottom bar. It should be a green, or next to a green button down there in chat, a little conversation bubble. But Lizzie asked, what is a simple way you can gather interest info from constituents from texting services? New to advancement, so trying to learn as much as I can. So the most common I see is people following up with recent graduates and asking, hey, what are you up to? Are you part of a alumni chapter? How is your career going? Can I help you with any services? And when that answer comes in and they say, yeah, I've been watching the basketball team, or yeah, I just joined the chapter in the city, that leads you and opens you up to more conversations about like, why did you give? Or, why are you interested? Why are you giving us your information? Those sorts of things. In fact, I would say any new donors, I would reach out to them and say, hey, what spurred you to give now and to give to this particular designation? So I would simply ask. I would follow up with people and ask that question.
Functionally, sales lady hat going on. This is not a Cadence pitch at all, but there are some features, since you asked for text specifically, keyword auto reply is an option. Within the Cadence platform, at least you can text in the word athletics to receive updates about athletics. So you could advertise those kind of ways of opting in to hear about certain things elsewhere, right? On social, in your on your website, in the email campaign. And those would really allow you to kind of tag or flag your constituents for wanting to hear about certain things. And I definitely, to piggyback up on what Mike said, that could certainly be something that you advertise during graduation week as your folks are being kind of into the new step in their relationship with you as an alum.
Yeah, and I think for the Division I basketball institutions that happen to be on here too, NCAA tournament starts in 48 hours. Using that as an impetus to say, hey, are you watching our Vowels play so-and-so in the first round? Would you like some behind the scenes pictures or content?
Yeah, like text this keyword into this number and we'll keep you up to date with behind the scenes info or something. Yeah, I think there's a lot of, I think people, when they're starting any sort of new medium, they're wondering like where to start. And really, it's just start somewhere, start small, and you're going to grow just like email campaigns, texting campaigns, whatever. You're going to grow the audience that is interested if you go about it in a really strategic and personal way.
Agreed. All right. Well, I haven't seen any other questions. Feel free to add them in the chat. Obviously, Michelle, first ever to go on camera and ask a question. So don't be afraid to go on camera or use your microphone. I believe was Susan did that as well as Lauren. So thank you for participating as well. Feel free to, ask your questions. We're here to give any advice. We've answered questions about YouTube in the past, all sorts of fun stuff. So Lexi, any tips for approaching companies, people to partner with Manchi? Wow. That's a good question. Lauren, I am completely incapable of answering that.
Yeah.
Both of you would be. What do you think?
Well, I think there's a lot of different, sometimes you have donors, like for instance, I used to run a golf tournament, a scholarship golf tournament. And there were some people that you could just tell that they were kind of, every year, sure, I'll buy a hole or sponsor a hole, but you maybe see that there's an opportunity for them to support something that's more tied to what their passion is about. And perhaps there's someone who's like, it seems like you're always tapping the same donors. Like, that you have donors that tell you that, like, hey, I noticed that you're always asking me for donors. Like, are you guys getting ever new donors? I think someone who says something like that is a prime example of someone who you should be tapped in. They're like, will you partner with me and help it happen? So help that happen by providing a matching grant, for any new donor that we get in the hour between 11 and 12, that you're going to use your traditional gift that you give to the golf tournament. And we're going to reallocate those funds to help us drive new donors. So that's just kind of one very specific example, but I know that you all probably have donors that you've seen lapsed in giving because they don't care about the golf tournament anymore. Maybe you're not doing a golf tournament anymore. And those type of folks where you're just leveraging a gift you might already have, hopefully increasing it, right? To help that person find meaning in their gift, because it's going to feel really good when they know that they helped get 25 new donors in that hour. That's one approach that I would take.
That's good. I see we had another question. We had a question come in prior to the event. So this is from Jessica on our team. Jessica, thanks for chiming in. How do schools go about retaining donors who gave for the first time during COVID? That's a good one. I would argue that the challenges that COVID presented didn't just go away overnight. We may or may not have removed mask mandates. We might have loosened restrictions and allowed for more in-person events and more engagement on campus. But the systemic issues that COVID accelerated didn't go away. They're still there, and explaining that need is still there. And in fact, for some institutions, CARES funds helped with a lot of that. That funding might not be there. So I think pivoting to areas of most need on campus, talking about food pantries, I forget who it was mentioned the student emergency fund earlier. Those particular funds are a great place to start and say, hey, the need's still there. Thank you for being a first-time donor in 2020. We can still really use your support in 2022.
Yeah, at Kent State, we called those the last dollar fund, which is like, there's students who come into, the dean, academic deans, and they're like, I have to withdraw. I have to apply for a leave of absence. I just have to go to work. I have to get some money, or they come on to some unforeseen illness or something like that. Just really highlighting those impact stories and making sure they get back into the inboxes or the social feeds of those who gave to that sort of fund to make sure they know that their giving really did make an impact for actual students on campus.
Good. All right. Any other questions? Feel free to ask away. No pressure if you don't have questions, by the way, too. Yeah.
I did think to Lizzie's question earlier about affinity, kind of gauging what people's affinity is. We have a client who did, now this was this was some data, but they basically texted their alumni and they surveyed them, like, which of the following 4 things would you say you identify with? And it was like 1, 2, or 3, or 4. They responded with the number. They crunched those numbers, not crunched them, but they solicited all of that data back. And then fast forward to their day of giving, they did use that affinity information to actually conduct their appeal. And they won, I believe they won a case award for doing that with texting. So something to
like external recognition. Yeah, I think that's a great idea for you to adapt as an institution. That's good. All right. We'll do one last call here on questions. Again, feel free to put them in chat, or you can go on camera or go on mic if you'd like to talk about anything else. And again, we've gotten very tangential historically in this series, so don't be afraid about getting really weird with the questions. But yeah, again, I really appreciate this group has been very engaging. So thank you for doing that. Again, Michelle, you're the first ever to engage with us and go on camera. So congratulations on that. And thank you for doing that. But yeah, otherwise we'll give everyone here maybe another minute to ask a question, and otherwise we'll let you go and have a great Tuesday. Oh, before we do head off too, our next session is going to be on engaging parents. We originally thought this was going to be more enrollment based, but I don't see a reason why we can't sprinkle in some advancement tidbits in there as well. Same thing with retention and those areas, student success. Oh, I see a note here too. There were questions about recordings. Typically 48 hours, 2 days, 3 days. But we will definitely get it to you ASAP, along with some keynotes to take away from today as well. So that's a good question.
We'd love to hear from you. I know there's a lot to dive in a giving day. I feel like I said, we could have broken this out to 4 different sessions. So please do either in the chat, or feel free to email myself or Mike. It's just our first names at mongooseresearch.com. Any future topics you'd like us to cover. We enjoy doing these. We do them every other Tuesday as a company, and we look forward to seeing you in future ones.
Yes, and speaking of the future one, the next one's going to be 2 p.m. Eastern time on March 29th. We're bringing in Campus ESP, and again, we're going to talk about parental engagement. Oh, there it is. Jessica put the note in there. Mark just asked, ideas for engaging young alumni to give back using Venmo. So this came from our marketing team. They saw this example. I loved it, so I'm going to take credit for it. A bingo board with gift amounts in Venmo. So you could fill up that board, you could send out images saying these are the spots that we have figured out. And yeah, that's a nice way to engage via Venmo. Are there more specific advancement recordings? I have to look at our schedule, to be honest with you, Tammy. I believe we are definitely going to focus on advancement. Our goal is to typically keep this as broad as possible, but every now and then, particularly if something's timely, we want to sprinkle in content specifically for those folks. But Tammy, I will find your contact information and I will get you a whole slew of advancement content, because we have all that as well. In fact, Jessica's putting some into the chat here as well for people who want to read those articles. This is actually a really good one about strategies that drive results on giving day. It actually comes from a similar presentation that Laura and I did in November as well. Good. I see folks trickling out. We don't want to keep you. If you have questions, feel free to hang out and ask away. Otherwise, again, thank you for participating. If you need to reach Lauren at mongooseresearch.com. You can also look up Lauren Jaeger on LinkedIn. I'm really sorry, I have a crazy last name, but Mike at mongooseresearch.com is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. I'm also on LinkedIn as well, Mike Kochczynski, KOCHCCYNSKI. Very good. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. We'll get the recording out to you in the coming days. And thanks for your participation, and good luck with your NCAA tournament.
Thank you.